around the 15,200 sort of levels. Volatility, that remains a concern. India VIX was up almost 0.8% and is at 14.7 sort of levels. But with that, let's also bring on board Mr. Brijesh Iyer of IDBI Capital Markets. Now, Brijesh, good morning. Thank you for joining us here on First Take. Now, Nifty, it has slipped below the 21,700 mark. It slipped below that yesterday, and it was trying to find support at those levels for the last 3 sessions in a row. But we are considerably below that, and we are even testing the levels of 21,550. So, what's your overall view on the headliner?
Yeah. Good morning, Suresh. So I think when we spoke last time, we predicted market to test somewhere 21,800. And I believe the market exactly tested 21,800. And now we are seeing slightly profit booking in the market. So technically, we were bound to see this profit booking because one of the main reason is whenever the prices move one way up, the prices are far away from the moving averages. So this is one of the main reason I feel profit booking will be. This is not a correction. The value of the 10 exponential moving average, which comes close to 21,500. So I have this view. We might come to 21,500, maybe 50 point plus and minus closer to this value. 21,500, I think we should find the support. And this is where the further directional view will be created. By any chance, if 21,500 is broken, then there can be slightly loss of momentum, and this can take the index further down. But right now, looking at the overall scenario and looking at the FI data and whatever that they are creating the position in the index future, I believe 21,500, close to 21,500, market should find support. The exact level for the Bank Nifty also comes at 47,000 level. If you see yesterday, Bank Nifty was the underperformer. It broke more than 450 points plus. So Bank Nifty has broken the support levels. So now currently 47,500, close to those levels. I think there can be further correction in Bank Nifty. Maximum correction is 47,000. And on the way up for the Bank Nifty, 48,000 is a very strong resistance. There is a lot of call writing as well. Only in the near term, if 48,000 is taken out, then the Bank Nifty will turn positive.
Good morning, Brijesh. Amit here. I'll drive your attention towards Hero MotoCorp. Now, in December, Hero MotoCorp reported sales at 3,93,952, which was marginally below 3,94,179 in December 2022. On Tuesday, the automaker reported a rise in sales of as much as 5%, total sales at 54.99 lakh as in 2023, as against 52.47 lakh sold the previous year. Despite that, if I look at the stock today, it is down 2.11% and sinking during the day. What do you make of the stock?
Morning, Amit. So I think, as you said, the data for the year is negative, but then the export data stands to be positive, which is, I think, close to 25% year-on-year positive. And if we look at the chart, the stock has already rallied over the last 2 months from the level of 3,200. The stock is at 4,200. So I believe this is just a profit booking of the rally what we saw. I don't have much of a negative view on the Hero Honda from the technical perspective. Closer to 3,900, 3,800, I will be once again looking to add the long positions, because in the near term, I think 4,500 plus is what can be the positional target for the Hero Honda. I think this opportunity should be viewed as a buying opportunity. Just a sentiment thing, just because of the data, there is a slight profit booking has been observed. This should be used as a buying opportunity.
All right, Brijesh, and before we let you go, it's been a very volatile market. So what will be your short-term trading ideas, both on the buy and the sell side, sir?
I think I will be looking for a buy itself, because I think we are somewhere close to the support demand zone. One stock which came to mind was Jindal Swap at the current level. The stop loss would be 430 for the target of 480. Again, a trading bet. Yesterday we saw Vector Food giving a very good volume breakout. So I think that will be on my list. The current price, the stop loss of 1175 for the target of 1290. And CI India is one positional pick which we are keeping a watch on. So I think we should be watching CI India at current price with a stop loss of 466 for the target of 530.
All right, that's Mr. Brijesh Iyer for you. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on First Take. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
But moving on, let's also look at the markets and how they are holding up, because Nifty continues to slip, and in fact it has slipped below the 21,600 mark. We are currently hovering around the 21,590 sort of level, so just about 25-30 points off the day's low. So we'll keep a track on 21,555 for for support today, and as the index was able to take support at 21,555 yesterday, and in fact so far it has taken support at those levels. On the BSE Sensex, now we are below 71,600 as well. That index is down 0.5% or about 370 points, and both the broader markets, both indices, mid cap and the small cap, have turned negative. Mid cap index as we speak is down by about 0.14%, and the small cap index is down about 0.1% as well, but it's still holding above the 15,100 sort of levels. There is also quite a bit weakness in the banking pack. On January 28th, we had hit a all-time high of about 48,636 on the index. Now we have corrected nearly 1,100 points in a matter of 4 or 5 sessions on the index. But with that, let's also take a short break. We'll be right back with you, and we have a lot more to cover. Thank you.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
It was my 14th birthday.
On birthday, daughter waits
Home missing father.
He was carrying a cake for his daughter.
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes.
He was grabbed and bundled into a car by 4 assailants.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Makbul Bhatt's release.
Goli maro, aur phek do.
And within 3 days, they shot him dead.
Abducted diplomat.
Found murdered in Leicestershire.
I said, who ordered to kill him? To me, he said, yes, I ordered it. And he never came home.
Stop searching. Start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Seeing is believing. Or is it? These are your favorite celebrities that you saw in the videos. But what if I told you that they are not?
Today, deepfake is one of the biggest challenges that the digital ecosystem is facing.
Cannot identify what is deepfake and what is real.
We have seen Rashmika Mandana go through the same thing, and this is becoming a common problem.
Everybody is going to be targeted.
The execution is, there's a laxity in our regulatory execution. In times to come, that is going to cost us a lot.
Welcome back. You're watching First Take here on News 9, and it has been a muted start to 2024. But Amit, I'll come to you. There is one pocket in the market that has been rallying in an otherwise muted market, and that has been the pharma pack. In fact, yesterday, when the entire market gave away about 0.5% or so, it was a pharma pack that, provided support and was able to pull Nifty, about 110 points off the day's low. In fact, it ended near the all-time high levels yesterday, and 10 stocks touched a fresh 52-week high. What's driving this rally?
They touched an all-time high of 17,251, surging 3% yesterday. If that was an all-time high, as we speak, it is at 17,314. So it's continuously rising even today. 19 out of 20 of the stocks finished the trade in the green, and as you mentioned, almost 10 touched an all-time high. I'll take you through the last 5 days. Nifty Pharma gained 4.43%. Lupin Laboratories 8.62%, Glenmark Pharma 5.81%, Divi's Lab 3.71%, Cipla 3.06%, Dr. Reddy's 5.23%, and Abbott India 4.25%. Some of the biggest gainers I'm talking about, and this has basically come on the back of improved performance in the US generic market, strong results in the branded markets of Indian pharmaceutical companies, reduced raw material costs, and the market shares have gained recently also on the news that the manufacturing of APIs and R&D of APIs may be another product that will be a China plus one branded product that will probably companies will shift from China to India in the research and development of APIs in the pharmaceutical sector. So all of them adding up to this rally, and of course that is the one that is sector that has been pulling up. Even as I speak right now, Nifty Pharma today is also up 0.24%.
And it's the only sector that is in fact trading in the green apart from the FMCG pack. So true defensive, it's acting like a true defensive for the market.
Yeah.
But let's take this conversation further with Mr. Mohit Gang, co-founder and CEO at Moneyfront. Now, thank you for joining us here on First Take, Mohit. Good morning to you. What's driving this buying interest in the pharma stocks? And there are 5 or 6 verticals, hospitals, diagnostics business. Among those verticals, what would be your preferred bet?
Hi, Suresh and Amit. A very happy morning and a very happy 2024 to you and your viewers. So look, I think, yes, if you ask me, the year has started on a very, very good note and a very strong footing for the entire pharma pack. And I think Amit has very rightly pointed out few of the stories which are panning out. Look, so I think on a broad basis, there is a good amount of market share gain, not just in India, domestic market, but also in the US market. There are new approvals, new FDA approvals which are coming through, which has been a consistent story though, but of late, I think the approvals have been fairly strong. There is a good demand in the generic market, new branded products have been coming in. And I think the entire research fraternity or the broking houses are bullish and are projecting a good high double-digit growth for the entire pack put together. And that's one of the reasons why the entire pack has been rallying. If you see across the broking houses, everyone is fairly bullish and is projecting a good growth trajectory for the entire pack. So overall, all in all, yes, the pharma packs look good. And plus you have news flow which is helping the mood. To my mind, I think the scenario of COVID again panning out to whatever extent it might just gives a little bit of impetus to these kind of sectors. And also pharma traditionally has been a defensive sector. Whenever the market is an extremely exuberant mood, pharma or FMCG will typically come to the rescue of market and just sober down the mood, or whenever markets are just sobering down, the pharma pack will kind of stabilize it. That's been one of the trends again. Right. So yes, the pack is looking extremely strong as we enter this year. To answer one other part of your question, Suyash, along with pharma, the healthcare, diagnostics, and the hospital thing is also picking up. And that's mostly to do with the India story, the demographic story of India, Suyash. And I think that story is not going away in a rush out here. As a country, we desperately need good hospitals. We desperately need more beds per person. We desperately need good diagnostic services and healthcare checkup services. And I think Indians are just waking up to these realities, right? As your life becomes more corporatized, you need regular and frequent checkups, and urban lives have all become very traumatized because of whatever we see around and do around in a daily life. So I think the diagnostic pack is a long-lasting theme. You will have cycles, of course, but that's a theme which I think is an overarching theme in terms of how the overall country and the demographics is shaping up. So my sense is that's a pretty long cycle to play. As you see more services at affordable prices coming in for a large number of Indians, and also Indians getting more health conscious and going for more kind of checkups and everything. So overall, yes, a pharma and healthcare pack looks extremely strong to me, not just in the immediate short term, but also from a very, very long term cyclical point of view.
Good morning, Mohit. Happy New Year to you. You spoke about the mood, and there is COVID that is happening. I'll just prod you a little bit more on that. Is it just COVID, or is the optimism specifically with respect to active pharmaceutical ingredients which form the basis of most products in the pharmaceutical sector? Is the shift real, or is the optimism misplaced that most big giants will be shifting their basis, be it research and development or actual manufacturing, development of these APIs to India from China?
No, I think, Amit, what you're saying is also quite relevant in the market. And that story is also gradually getting played out. I think it's a mix of whole lot of factors. So COVID is just one sidekick. It's not the whole factor. It's not the main factor. Honestly, I think the pack on itself has been doing and producing extremely good numbers. And if you see multiple names also in this, when your heavyweights start working, which is your Sun Pharma going out and acquiring a company in Israel, your Lupin hitting a 52-week high after a fairly long while. So when you see those heavyweights, long old hands working good, I think then you know that the overall pack is doing good. And yes, I think the API story shifting from China to India, or some portion of Chinese production or manufacturing coming to India, is also true and is for real. And I think that also will help the pack again, but that's a long story how it will pan out. However, market is and will always discount these kind of news and these kind of positive sentiments much in advance, and which is what is happening in the market, right?
All right. And, Mohit, Adani Group stocks, now they are also, rallying as much as 17%. Now, before I come to you, I'll come to Amit first. All 10 stocks from the Adani stable are in the green. They have rallied as much as, about 17% or so. And this, of course, as we know, is ahead of the SC verdict, which is expected to come out, around 10:30 a.m. this morning. But give us a lowdown, Amit, how they have performed overall and how they are doing today, and how has the run been since the Hindenburg report came out?
Since the Hindenburg report came out in February last year, Adani stocks have regained half the losses that they incurred at that time. Even in just the last 1 month, Adani has recovered $46 billion in market capitalization just in the last 1 month. Post the allegations, almost $150 billion had been wiped out from the market capitalization of all Adani stocks. So that is how it has been performing since. It has been up and again, away. And we have spoken about so many companies who have made gains, who put money in Adani post Hindenburg, and the windfalls that they have basically made in the last 1 year. So, and there is optimism right now because most people are expecting a positive verdict.
Is it more like, are people penciling in a favorable verdict? Because it does seem so. The street is gung-ho on Adani Group stocks. They are up almost as much as 15 to 17%. Adani Enterprise is up about 8% or so as we speak. And, it's only rising higher, but still a fair distance away from that January 24th price of about 3,800 or so. I think it's still down about 15%. What's your overall take on this Adani stable of stocks, and can perhaps we invest in some of these stocks at this point in time?
Hi, Suresh, and I think we've spoken about the Adani pack a number of times on your show itself, and somehow I think it's a coincidence that whenever we are speaking, there's something happening in that stock or the pack. So look, I think Street has completely penciled in a favorable judgment, and which was evident from the tone and manner of the proceedings which were conducted in the court, even which is evident from what SEBI has placed out in its report. So look, we can be negatively surprised on this, but I think Street is really right in terms of predicting what it is predicting. On the second part, it is still away from the peaks. Look, I think falling from 100 to 50 is a 50% fall. From rising back from 50 to 100 is a 100% jump, right? So it's always difficult going back to the same levels. But the way the momentum is, the way the rally is, plus the political scenario, the way it is panning out and everything, my sense is I think the Street is completely right in being bullish on the entire pack, right? And as I've always maintained on the show, that we typically try and stay away from stocks which are a little politically sensitive and otherwise sensitive. But yes, as of now, the overall packs look extremely interesting. I've always maintained on the show that I think in the entire pack, we typically like Adani Power, ACC, Ambuja. We like these names. And yes, if everything goes back in favor of the group, I think there's no reason. And plus, you have good foreign partners who've invested in a lot of money. The overall debt of the group has reduced. So I think the balance sheets are also looking much healthier than what they were a year back. So yeah, I think it's a great story in making.
Mohit, you mentioned Ambuja and some others. I would like to draw your attention to the one that has been rallying the most, which is Adani Energy Solutions, almost 16% today. Is it because of a smaller price of the stock, or is it something else that we are looking at?
And I think it was one of the stocks that corrected the most after that initial fall, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's to do with the entire green energy pack. If you were to look at the names like Suzlon or maybe some smaller names like Orient Power and Adani Power and Adani Green Energy, in that case, I think that entire green energy theme or the entire carbon neutral theme or the theme around whatever producing efficient forms of electricity, the EV theme or so on and so forth. I think you're getting my drift, right? In terms of these kind of plays, they've all done exceedingly well. I think Street is just factoring in a lot of growth and a lot of government thrust on this sector. Even when you saw in the listing of IRDA, which was a green financing company, you kind of saw the listing which has happened, right? From it's still at 100 plus kind of a mark, I think, and I think the IPO price was around 32 or something. So anything and everything to do with that green energy theme has caught on the fancy of the market. And sometimes market can overdo their exuberance without the fundamentals being in place. But when markets are like really playing out the theme so well, you can be typically sure that there is something big happening and there is a lot of thrust and impetus from the government on these kind of themes. So which I'm sure will play out in a matter of time.
All right, that's Mohit Gang for you. Mohit, thank you for joining us here on News9. Always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.
But before we wrap things up, the Indian markets are still hovering somewhere, at least on Nifty. Nifty is hovering still somewhere below the 21,600 mark. We have seen a bit of a recovery. We have recovered about 20-30 points off the day's low. But 21,600 remains a key resistance. At least that's what the experts indicate. Sensex is also down about 300 points also. And the broader markets, they have also turned a corner and they are in the red. The Nifty Midcap 100 index as we speak is down 0.16% above the 46,300 mark, whereas the small cap index has corrected by about 0.2%, but it's still holding above the 15,100 mark. Volatility has slipped. India VIX is down somewhere about 0.3%, but it's still holding above the 14.5 level, so that flags caution. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of First Take. Keep watching News9.
This was intended to be a terrorist spectacular without precedent.
The plan was to bomb 2 Air India passenger aircrafts simultaneously.
There was a loud explosion and the whole plane just vanished.
The police dropped the ball, the intelligence officers dropped the ball, and the politicians dropped the ball.
It was a conspiracy that destroyed my life. It destroyed 331 lives.
News is now content. Just stream it. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus. I'm Shweta Kothari. We're bringing you stories from the world of business, policy and economy. First up, let's begin with headlines. Truckers' call of strike after government assures hit-and-run law to be implemented only after discussion with stakeholders. And Zomato hikes platform fee to 4 rupees from 1st of January after bumper New Year's Eve. We will discuss the impact on you, the users. Life Insurance Corporation gets 806 crores GST demand notice. LIC says it will file an appeal against the order. And it's the D-Day verdict for Adani-Hindenburg case. Supreme Court of India will deliver the crucial verdict today on petitions seeking probe into allegations of stock price manipulation. All those stories right here on News9. With me is Karthik Malhotra, back into 2024 and of course starting the day with the big story that will be breaking in just about half an hour from now, and that is the Adani-Hindenburg row. The Supreme Court, which reserved its verdict back in November of 2023, will come up with what's in order and what's the future of Adani looking like, perhaps.
That's right, Shweta. So I think 10:30 is when the Supreme Court bench, headed by Chief Justice of India, D.Y. Chandrachud, is likely to assemble and start delivering or pronouncing the verdict. And I think the message was fairly clear even in November, despite the Supreme Court deciding to reserve the judgment till today, the 3rd of Jan. But I think the message was clear, saying that SEBI has no reason to take as gospel truth whatever it sees in media reports. And I think the Supreme Court was then referring to the OCCRP investigation, which of course was released much later than the Hindenburg research report, which came out on the 24th of Jan 2023. So just a little under a year, finally today at about 10:30 to 10:40, we will
some
get
sort of
to
final
know
relief,
a final
or
relief,
or a final reason to be worried about a verdict.
Let's just call it a verdict.
A verdict on Adani
10:30 is when we should get into that.
10:30 to about 10:45. That is when the verdict is expected to be delivered in the Adani-Hindenburg case. But moving on to a story that has literally brought north of India, major cities, on its knees, and that is the truckers' protest. The protest over Section 106 of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which is likely to replace the old archaic laws when it comes to various hit-and-run rules, has worried truckers. And they're worried because the fine that they are going to pay now and the sentencing is going to be much harsher, post which they decided to go on a strike all across major cities of north of India, and there was a supply crunch which was felt on 1st and 2nd of Jan. Now they've called off the strike.
So the strike has been called off, but I think a final deliberation between the All India Motor Traders, Motor Transporters Association, as well as the Government of India is still sort of, underway. That conversation has happened, but what is the real bone of contention here, Shweta? I think the bone of contention really is that we've seen in the year 2022, road accidents reach new record highs. About 4.5 lakh odd road accidents occurred in 2022. The major causes of these road accidents, the first topping the list was hit from the back. The second one, in fact, was hit and run. And in the case of hit and run, especially when it comes to truck drivers who have been part of a hit and run case, what they do is there has been an accident, you've hit somebody, you flee. Now, that is something that the government took cognizance of, and said that the hit and run cases is what the government is going to go after. And the changes in the penal code with this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita were to add a penalty of up to 10 lakh rupees. Jail time of about 10 years and penalty up to 7 lakh rupees on these truck drivers. Now, earlier the existing penal code had a penalty of about 2 lakh rupees. Now, this jail term of 10 years and a fine of 7 lakh rupees is something that the truck drivers feel is too steep, too harsh a punishment. And what are they really saying? They are saying that in the case of a hit and run, they prefer to run, because if they don't run, they get attacked by the mobs. Whether they are to blame or not they get attacked. Absolutely. And their life and their property is at threat because of the mob action that takes place at the scene of an accident. So they went in arms against this new sort of ruling, which is yet to be notified, and said that they prefer to sort of, have a discussion with the government and not go ahead to calling off the strike until there is more clarity. Now, that conversation happened and the strike has been called off. Now, you're right. What really also happened during then was, especially at petrol pumps, fuel stations, because these trucks carry fuel that gets replenished at petrol pumps across the country. And there were queues of people wanting to fill up their car tanks and motorcycle tanks with fuel, which was said to be in short supply because of the strike. Now, the strike has been called off, but and the government has assured the Truck Drivers Association that there is going to be dialogue and the rules will be implemented, notified, changes will be made to the penal code only after deliberation with the Truck Drivers Associations. So, as of now, yeah, the strike has been called off, but I think a very, very serious re-examination is required to understand how road accidents can be prevented and how those responsible for deaths arising out of road accidents are taken to law and action is taken against them. So just calling off the strike and backing down on a harsh punishment is not how the government should consider this.
Not really a back down. I mean, come to think of it, what government is essentially saying is that we have not implemented, notified the law. Although the law has been passed in the parliament, we will be negotiating with you. We will be taking your issues into cognizance and thereafter we'll be implementing those set of laws.
Absolutely.
So perhaps
but
we don't know if it's going to water down the existing provisions of the law.
It should not. And I believe it is a very, very serious issue at hand. India, in fact, in 2022 recorded as many as 19 deaths per hour. Over 60 accidents every hour reported, out of which 1/3 resulted in death. 19 deaths every hour on Indian roads is obviously a big problem. And the government has to tackle that, has to handle that. Will this new law be the only solution to it? Should there be scope for negotiation? Well, negotiation, sure. Negotiation could be in terms of maybe the penalty one has to pay. Is it going to be the truck driver responsible for that penalty, or is it going to be the trucking company responsible for the penalty? I think those nitty-gritties need to be ironed out, but I don't think the government should back down, and it should not be limited to hit-and-run cases by truck drivers alone. It should be sort of applicable to everybody who is engaged in an accident.
Absolutely, everyone and anyone. Stricter laws perhaps in hit and run cases. The government has notified by the way of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita section 106 of that, and the protest has now been called off after government has assured that there will be more debate, discussion with stakeholders including the Truckers Driver Association in order to understand what their concerns are with the law. But moving on to a story that is going to affect you, the users, especially people who order out perhaps more frequently than others. Zomato has hiked its platform fee. It is an annual affair, but a fee of 4 rupees. What does it mean for consumers?
So, Shweta, it started with a 2 rupee platform fee that got implemented in the month of August 2023, right? Just about 5 months ago. And then it got hiked to 3 rupees in the month of November. And now, 1st Jan, it is hiked to 4 rupees. But how social media is actually seeing
New Year's Eve, it was 9 rupees.
I mean, yeah, I think on New Year's Eve, with the volume of orders, I think there was a milking opportunity, rightly or wrongly, for Zomato, which it went ahead and milked. But a platform fee of 4 rupees up from 3 rupees on social media is being seen as a 33% hike. 33% is a big number, but 1 rupee, I think, on an order worth even 400 rupees, 300 rupees is actually not a big deal. Analysts feel that this is, in fact, better for Zomato, better for food delivery apps in their path to profitability. But, I mean, even a company like Swiggy, for example, Zomato's biggest competitor, also charges a platform fee of 3 rupees. In fact, on 31st of December, it charged a platform fee of 4 rupees from me, from an order that I had placed. So from 3 rupees to 4 rupees is in fact average pricing on platform fee.
So just
which
1
I don't
rupee
think is a big
expensive.
deal. It's 1 rupee more expensive. But the point is, are they going to keep adding 1 rupee, 1 rupee, 1 rupee every month? And when are they going to stop charging that fee?
So
but should they stop charging that fee? Well, they also need to make money, right? They're giving you the convenience of delivering food as and when you want it within 30 minutes flat. I think it's fair for them to think about their own profits.
I think the only question perhaps is those who are in competition, especially Swiggy, whether they're going to follow suit.
So Swiggy, like I said, has already has been charging 3 rupees. On New Year's Eve did charge 4 rupees. Will it continue charging 4 rupees?
Absolutely.
Will it come down to 3? Will it take it up to 5? Overall, I think this whole ecosystem will have to arrive at an equilibrium where the platform fee being charged is pretty much uniform. Otherwise, they will see people switching from one platform to another. They are pretty much homogeneous entities in that sense, and at some level ensure that they're not fleecing the customers.
Absolutely, and I think they will need that money, come to think of it, given the GST notices that have been raining for both Zomato, Swiggy, and the latest being LIC.
Absolutely. So I think GST notices, of course, is a different issue altogether, and this 5-year expiry of issuing GST notices comes to an end this financial year. So the cases that we are looking at, the GST notices, are for the year 2017-2018, and that 5-year expiry is going to happen. So I think the GST mechanism is on overdrive right now to ensure that these notices are sent out. But the problem now is that many of these cases are actually going to be stuck in litigation for years. LIC, for example, has said that it is going to litigate. Zomato has said it's going to litigate. HUL, which received in the month of December a notice of almost 500 crore rupees, 480 crore rupees or so. Zomato received a notice of about 400 crore rupees. Banks, including HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank, etc., Kotak Mahindra Bank, have all received GST notices. Now, this whole GST notice overdrive started with the e-gaming companies, but in that case, it was understandable to some extent because of this confusion in the prevailing rates. Would it be 18%? Would it be 28%? Would it be face value? Would it be platform fee, etc.? So what started with a very, very focused sector industry, e-gaming, where notices were being slapped, has now pretty much become industry agnostic.
Absolutely.
And all industries, from banking to food delivery to insurance companies, everybody, pretty much FMCG giants, everybody is receiving notices of a few hundreds of crores.
I think the question in everybody's mind, and before we close for break, would be, what is happening all of a sudden? Is the GST authority waking up late? Is there a problem with the law and the understanding of the law? What exactly is happening? Why the shortfall?
So I feel, Shweta, at some level, there is obviously some sort of a mismatch in what companies have reported, either as their turnover or as input credit that they have received on whatever they have procured into delivering that final product to the customer. And this mismatch is getting even more pronounced with the infusion of IT, with the infusion of big data within the tax authorities, whether it is GST, indirect taxes, or even direct taxes. I think even individuals receiving tax notices has only been going up year on year. So when big data analyzes this, these discrepancies are easy to get flagged.
Whopping discrepancies, come to think of it. 806 crore rupees for LIC.
And this is the third notice that LIC has received. It received about 200 crore rupees notice, 180, 190 crores in the month of December. 2 months before that, in the month of October, it had another notice of about 100 crores or so. So overall, I think these sporadic notices coming are actually taking this whole GST collection to a new high, but only after perhaps litigation ends one way or another.
All right. The litigation, of course, likely to continue. LIC says it is going to contest the GST notice of over 800 crore rupees, and so will Hindustan Unilever as well as Swiggy and Zomato. Whether GST authority will get this money or not get this money, we don't know, but it's raining GST notices so far. With that, it's time for a quick commercial break. We'll be back after a couple of minutes from now.
Pakistani spy agency ISI's sinister plan to target India. Training women to honey trap top civil and military officials. Counter honey trapping ops initiated by India. But gullible victims still caught in the web. Top military intelligence experts break down the web of deception. Colonel Hani Bakshi explains the phenomena of honey trap.
जहां पे भी आपको लगेगा, उनको लगेगा कि there is a person who is susceptible to women, who's making a lot of women friends on the social media. That is where they will make a spoof account and then start luring the person.
Colonel Pavitran Rajan decodes the psyche of the victim and the predator.
But when you go up the chain, no one enforces it to people at the top. That disciplinary regime and the security regime is not enforced at the top. And they usually have a public profile where it is much more easier to approach that person.
A News9 special on how modern technology has added teeth to the ancient spying tactic.
Our story takes you inside Pakistan's honey trap machine.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Currently, the industry is facing a lot of challenges as far as demand is concerned. Basically, the US markets has slowed down because of high inflation.
So obviously, diamonds being a dream product, something which doesn't have a utility value or is seen as a luxury. So that obviously goes off your shopping list. That's the first item that will go off your shopping list, especially in recessionary trends.
That lab-grown diamonds are not mined, and they do away with the entire mining. So they save up on all the environmental damage that is associated with mining, and of course, the mining cost, which is why they're even more affordable.
People that is impacted by all these recessions are the artisans, are the people who work in this industry, right? But I think lab-grown diamond has allowed them to actually use their skills in the same product.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court of India will pronounce its verdict today, that is on 3rd of January, on a batch of petitions seeking examination of allegations of fraud made against Adani Group of companies in the Hindenburg research report. Now, the bench comprising Chief Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, Justices J.B. Pardiwala and Manoj Misra will deliver the judgment on as many as 4 petitions. The top court had reserved its judgment pertaining to the same case in November of 2023. Remember, the pleas claimed the allegations that Adani Group inflated share prices after report of short seller Hindenburg research. The share value of various group entities fell sharply. The ports to power conglomerate denied all allegations and also tried to rework its strategy for revival. The Adani Group, led by Gautam Adani, has dismissed all the allegations, labelled them as unresearched, malicious and mischievous. Despite this, the report prompted substantial decline in Adani Group stocks, resulting in about 140 billion worth eroded within days, compelling a cancellation of 20,000 crore share sale at the time. Adani, who was the world's second richest man at the start of the year, saw almost $60 billion of decline in personal wealth after the Hindenburg research report. All those allegations could be put to rest today or could be proven today, one way or the other. The verdict will be out very, very shortly. Sriram Subramaniam joining us on the show. Also with me is Kartik Malhotra. Before I go to Sriram, Kartik, it's a very crucial decision. It's a make or break for Adani.
Absolutely it is, Shweta. And I think the messaging was fairly clear even in the month of November last year when the Supreme Court had actually reserved its judgment. But it had said very clearly that there is no need for SEBI, the market regulator, to look at media reports as a gospel of truth. And I think the messaging has been fairly clear, and I think it is likely to be a favorable verdict for Adani Group. But until the verdict is out, I think one should not speculate. But you're right, it is an absolute make or break day, and today is the day that we've been waiting for, in fact, for many months now. Remember, it all started on the 24th of Jan 2023. We are on 3rd of Jan 2024. Almost a year since allegations of stock manipulation, flouting of MPC rules and gaining by way of short selling were leveled against Adani Group by Hindenburg Research, and that sort of continued into another investigation by OCCRP, which built on what Hindenburg Research had sort of come out with in its own research, followed by another scam that broke out, which was the coal overpricing invoicing. That of course is going to be outside of the verdict that the Supreme Court will pronounce today. But I think on this flouting of MPS rules and on stock manipulation, the various pleas filed in the Supreme Court for investigation into the matter is all up for its final conclusion one way or another today.
All right, Sriram Subramaniam. Sriram, would it be prudent to say, given how stocks are reacting at the moment, how markets are anticipating, the result could be favourable, also in line with, the commentary that came out of Supreme Court in the last session of the Supreme Court when the verdict was reserved? The commentary seemed favourable towards Adani.
Yes, I would think so. At least the markets are expecting favourable commentary. If anything, it may not be like overly sort of supportive of Adani, but at least dismissive of the allegations, I would think.
Okay, dismissive of allegations, that is the expectation. But I want to take you back to 24th of January 2023, almost a year from now. Serious allegations were made. If we were to group these allegations into some of the major allegations, one was that of stock price manipulation, other was accounting fraud, and the third was of course that many of these entities have flouted shareholding norms, shareholding patterns. Those were the allegations. Over the course of last 1 year, we've seen Adani Group stocks taking a beating, personal wealth of Adani going down, Gautam Adani coming out for the first time in many years trying to clarify the air around these allegations. Since then, it's been a year, but seems like the saga has continued.
It's been a year, the saga has been continuing. Will the saga eventually end today is what I think we are waiting for, and we will know in a few minutes from now, Shweta. Yes, Adani Group stocks had taken a beating of about 150 billion dollars worth, yes. And a lot of that has actually been recovered as well. So there have been these nudges which have come. For example, I think the latest nudge that came in the recovery of Adani stocks was when it was seeking a loan from the US, the International Finance Corporation, to develop a port in Sri Lanka. That is when we had seen some sort of, a major recovery in Adani
and
stocks.
A commentary from
so that
Finance
pretty much said, and even the US, the department which was issuing this loan had said that the Hindenburg research report is inconsequential. It was inconsequential in the loan being given out because that loan is dependent on the corporate ratings that Adani Group has. So it had sort of, so that came as one straw of confidence in this overall saga, apart from many others which have come over time, including the expert committee appointed by the Supreme Court in the month of May, when it came out with its own interim sort of report on the investigation undertaken by SEBI. And this expert committee comprised no less than Justice A.M. Sapre. It comprised K.V. Kamath, Nandan Nilekani, O.P. Bhatt, etc. It was a 6-member committee.
Some of the biggest industrialists, some of the biggest, most important names in corporate India.
So at that time, the narrative had actually shifted in the month of May to this expert committee giving a clean chit to Adani Group. But it was actually not a clean chit to Adani Group. It was more of a clean chit to SEBI, that there has been no regulatory failure on part of SEBI's own investigation, which it had undertaken into looking at Adani Group of companies in the year 2020.
Absolutely.
So it was more of a clean chit for SEBI than a clean chit for Adani. But today's verdict is actually going to hopefully come at some sort of a juncture where one may be able to more confidently say whether there was wrongdoing on part of Adani Group or not. Adani Group all this while has said that it has denied all wrongdoing. It has always said that this has been a calculated attack on India. So I think that narrative has been consistent for the last 1 year.
Come to think of it, in the middle of the year, the narrative sort of shifted, Sriram. In the May, when expert committee, in a sense, said that we have concluded that we could not find anything wrong with how Adani Group of companies have operated, and shift the ball and the buck to SEBI. SEBI is to decide whether any norms, any markets norms were violated by Adani Group of companies or not. Now, since then, SEBI has come on record to state that we have concluded firmly investigation into 22 out of the 24 matters that we were investigating. What are we making of these investigations that have concluded? Is anything out in public domain for us to go through, for us to look at, to understand whether these 22 matters, or what are these 22 matters?
Yeah, I think the largest of these violations that SEBI would like to be investigating is the violation of the minimum public shareholding. That is, the minimum public shareholding should be 25%. And it is alleged that many of the shareholders are actually proxies of the promoters of Adani Group companies. So to that extent, these foreign entities, be it Mauritius, be it Cayman Islands, be it anywhere else, these entities are indirectly controlled by Adani promoters. That is the largest allegation. I think that would have taken SEBI a lot of time and effort to investigate. I'm not sure what the outcome of the SEBI findings are, because that is not in the public domain yet. None of the 24, I think, investigation matters are out in the public domain as of yet. Hopefully today, Supreme Court should table whatever SEBI's findings are.
Sriram, we are given to understand CGI has started reading out the verdict. Let me quickly read out what CGI is saying so far in the court. The Government of India and SEBI shall take into consideration the recommendations of the committee to strengthen the interest of Indian investors. That is the Chief Justice of India. He further says that the Government of India and SEBI will look into if there is any infraction of law by Hindenburg report on short selling, and if so, take action in accordance with the law. Essentially saying the recommendations that were made by expert committee will be taken into consideration. What were these recommendations, Sriram?
No, that's what I think. The Supreme Court is also just pushing the ball onto SEBI. I mean, SEBI as a regulatory framework, that is a framework which has to, I would say, investigate any violations of securities norms. And even the expert committee said the same thing. It effectively said that the current regulatory environment of SEBI is good enough. There is nothing to change. SEBI has to just do its job. I think Supreme Court will also do the same thing today. It will basically say, it won't explicitly give a clean sheet to Adani Group, but at the same time it will say that current regulatory, this one is fine, and SEBI should just continue with its investigation or come out with its report or whatever.
So, Sriram, are we likely to see any sort of verdict on what the Hindenburg research had reported in the month of Jan, or is it going to be limited to the remit of SEBI? And what the flashes that we are seeing right now, which are coming in, suggesting that Supreme Court is going to park the ball again in the court of SEBI, saying that SEBI has to ensure that shareholders are protected going forward. It has to strengthen its own sort of framework to ensure that such cases do not happen. But in such cases, is this going to be some sort of a verdict on the Hindenburg research and the allegations it leveled against the Adani Group, or is it only going to be on what SEBI should do going forward?
No, I would think, because again, see, nobody can rely on a Hindenburg report. I mean, SEBI cannot rely on it, neither can Supreme Court rely on it. There is no ask by Hindenburg to investigate these matters directly to the regulator. They have just put out a report in the public domain. So to that extent, Supreme Court can only rule on the petitions. One. Two is Supreme Court will push the ball onto SEBI, saying that the current regulatory framework by SEBI is good enough. And so I would think the ball will again come back to SEBI. Supreme Court may dismiss all the petitions, saying that it is now the prevail or the territory of SEBI to going forward safeguard the interests of the shareholders of Adani. That is sort of leave it, I would say, in limbo. I mean, there wouldn't be conclusive yes, no, some grey areas will be there.
Okay, but there were certain pleas also in the Supreme Court, especially those which were filed by Prashant Kishore and Prashant Bhushan, I beg your pardon, as well as Vishal Tiwari, which were pleas where there was to be some investigation appointed by the Supreme Court in understanding these allegations by the Hindenburg research report and then by OCCRP. So, Supreme Court has thus far always said that these reports cannot influence the decision of SEBI. But does it really mean that there is going to be no independent investigation outside of SEBI when it comes to investigating this Hindenburg research?
You know, I think we do have an update on that.
Okay.
In fact, we are given to understand that Supreme Court has now said that there is no ground to transfer the investigation from SEBI to SIT, essentially limiting the investigation to SEBI itself, giving 3-month extension. And that is another significant update for our viewers at this point in time. SEBI says that it has completed its investigation in the 20 out of 22 matters.
That came out in November,
yes,
fact.
and the CGI is saying that SEBI will be given additional 3 months to complete its investigation in the remaining 2 matters.
I hope we are not actually referring to what the Supreme Court said in the month of
November. These are the latest updates coming out from the court. CGI is reading the verdict. I'm reading from live law at the moment. And this is as I think dating back to about 5 minutes ago.
Right.
CGI continues to read out the verdict. He's also said that Supreme Court says that report of OCCRP cannot be taken into account to doubt the SEBI's investigation.
Which was again said in November. So I'm just wondering, is this a repetition of what the Supreme Court said in the month of November being read out again right now before the final verdict is given out, or is this part of the final verdict?
This is the part of the final verdict is what we're given to understand. CGI speaking on the final verdict. He is saying that the reliance on OCCRP report is rejected and reliance on third-party organization report without any verification cannot be relied on as a proof. So essentially all those reports, all those allegations by OCCRP now stand to rest.
Okay. What do you make of it, Sriram? Is this pretty much saying that whatever has been published by independent research organizations or independent journalistic organizations like OCCRP, which are into investigative journalism, should have no bearing, no impact on how SEBI should go ahead and conclude its investigation now in this 3-month extension that has been offered?
Yeah, that's what I would think so. At the end of the day, no regulator can rely on a third-party research report, so to say. It can only sort of at least take into account the allegation, but it cannot rely entirely on it. It has to independently verify all the data points, and it has to, if anything, look at foreign jurisdictions to figure out who are the beneficial owners.
But does SEBI, unlike the SIT or the Enforcement Directorate, does SEBI have the remit to really identify those opaque structures which reside outside of the shores of India? Can SEBI on its own undertake that investigation and come up with something conclusive, Sriram?
Yeah, that's where the challenge for SEBI is, because it may have to rely on certain other agencies like the Enforcement Directorate, etc., to actually query the foreign jurisdictions. So to that extent, SEBI may be constrained a bit to investigate some of these matters, or may take a longer time to investigate. So at the end of the day, right now, I would think that all the petitions would be dismissed by Supreme Court. The ball will move to the SEBI. Basically, Supreme Court, the larger message is the regulator cannot rely on third-party reports. 1, 2 is the regulator has to do their job, and the current regulatory framework or environment is good enough to investigate all these matters.
All right. In fact, court has also rejected the arguments of petitioners regarding conflict of interest on the part of members of the expert committee. That was another point
which
of
again
contention.
had come out in the month of November,
where
the
there
Supreme
was no
Court
outright
had said
rejection.
There wasn't a verdict on that.
A verdict on that.
Yeah.
The verdict now is that allegations with respect to conflict of interest that were leveled by petitioners back in November have also now been rejected. Essentially, the expert committee report is what the Supreme Court is going by at the moment. They are also directing SEBI to protect the interest of investors and also be looking at implementing the report of the expert committee.
Okay, so let's just recap. What do we know so far from what is being said in the Supreme Court right now? We know for a fact that there is going to be no transfer of case outside of SEBI's remit.
So no SIT
no
probe?
SIT, no CBI, no Enforcement Directorate as of now, to our limited understanding right now, as the court is in its pronouncing of the verdict underway. So we know that there is going to be no transfer of the case outside of SEBI. We know for a fact that SEBI has now been given an extension of 3 months to conclude its investigation. Now, what we also knew in the month of November, and before that, even in the month of August, in fact, dating back to about 6 months ago, what we've known is that SEBI had concluded its investigation in 20 out of the 22 matters. The pending 22 matters, to our understanding, though nothing has been conclusively drawn on those 22 matters, was that SEBI has hit a wall when it came to opaque structures, which it was unable to penetrate. Those opaque structures were theoretically, so to speak, penetrated by OCCRP, where the final beneficiaries and their potential linkages to the Adani family had been drawn. But as of now, what we understand, Supreme Court is saying that the case will not be transferred outside of SEBI, and SEBI will get another 3 months to conclude its investigation in all 22 matters. Now, the question still that remains unanswered is, what if SEBI is unable to conclude its investigation on those two pending matters, even in the next 3 months? It has been dwelling over those pending matters for over 6 months now. If there was a headway, SEBI should have breached that wall and arrived at something conclusive. If it hasn't been able to do it in the last 6 months, or in the last 1 year, or since 2020 for that matter, will it be able to do it in the next 3 months? And if not, what happens after 3 months, Sriram?
I would think, yes, it's not an easy decision, I would think. SEBI by itself, I don't think has any control over how the foreign jurisdictions respond. So to that extent, even 3 months may not be sufficient enough for SEBI to conclusively arrive at any, I would say, bring this, all the 24 matters. Maybe SEBI will rule on the 22 matters and then leave 2 matters out for a future date. We don't know that yet.
I think what's also important to understand is what are these 22 matters, and we know the 2 pending matters, and that is with respect to the foreign holding within the companies, the opaque structures as we call them. But what about these 22 matters? Is there a clean sheet to Adani in these 22 matters? Is that the understanding?
We don't know yet. I think that SEBI report in itself has not yet been released because it is pending on account of those 2 matters. So I don't think SEBI has yet publicly disclosed its findings on the remaining 20 matters as well. And that decision again is going to take the course of the law, and whatever SEBI has to deliver as part of its own report and its own leveling of action, penalties, etc., as the case may be, is going to completely be as per the law governing the regulator, which is SEBI. So as of now, I think another 3-month extension to SEBI to come up with some conclusion in its report, in its investigation, and add to that the fact that Supreme Court pretty much telling SEBI that do not rely on Hindenburg research, do not rely on OCCRP, do not rely on media reports. Conduct your own investigation and basis your own objective investigation, follow the course of law and impose whatever is the due imposition on the matter.
And in fact, one of the most damning sentences that CGI has read so far, which I'd like to read it here for our viewers, is that before concluding, public interest jurisprudence was developed to provide access to ordinary citizens. Petitions which lack adequate research and rely on unsubstantiated reports cannot be accepted. Essentially wrapping up the petitioners as well, saying that the petitions were in fact not researched properly, they were on unsubstantiated reports. Further said that reliance on newspaper reports and third-party organizations to question the statutory regulator does not inspire confidence. They can be treated as inputs but not conclusive evidence to doubt SEBI probe. All in all, suggesting that SEBI will likely continue with the probe in the matter. In the 22 cases, the 2 remaining cases, of course 20 cases, it has concluded its investigation, but there is not going to be any transfer of power. Sriram, just to recap briefly what we are learning at the moment, statements, the judgment that is being read out by Chief Justice of India is that SEBI will likely continue with investigating the matter. SEBI has about 3 more months. That is what CGI has said at the moment. He has also, in a way, held the petitioners accountable for coming up or for bringing up these reports, the OCCRP report and the various other media reports which have leveled allegations on Adani Group, suggesting that these reports are not enough to go by and cannot ask SEBI or cannot ask transfer of ongoing investigation from SEBI to SIT on the basis of these reports.
Yeah, I would think SEBI itself is empowered to investigate all the matters. So to that extent, transferring to SIT is of no consequence per se. If anything, SEBI has all the powers and should bring the investigation to some conclusive, I would say, point. So at the end of the day, Supreme Court is basically pushing the ball onto SEBI.
Okay. Now, going back to the original petitions, can we now say that the judgment has come favorably, Karthik, Sriram, in favor of Adani Group? Because the petitions asked for an SIT probe in the matter, that is not going to happen. Can we now conclude that the verdict is in favor of Adani Group?
Well, the verdict is definitely not against Adani Group, that is for sure. And the verdict is pretty much to do with SEBI and SEBI's investigation. The verdict does not yet have anything specifically for or against Gautam Adani. As I see it, Shweta, and the story is still developing, as I see it right now, is that there is going to be no reliance on Hindenburg Research, OCCRP, Financial Times, any public sort of reports which emerge in the media for SEBI to draw its own conclusions from, and it'll have to do its own investigation independently. That is number one. Number two, I believe the ball is squarely in the court of SEBI. Supreme Court is not going to intervene looking at the allegations of the Hindenburg Research or OCCRP into the matter, and is going to allow SEBI to follow its own course of investigation and come out with whatever necessary imposition and its own sort of, independent view on the matter and report that. And third, of course, is that more time given to SEBI to hopefully penetrate those opaque structures and draw some sort of a given to SEBI to hopefully penetrate those opaque structures and draw some sort of a conclusion on the two pending matters. So the ball is squarely in the court of SEBI. Supreme Court is unlikely, in my understanding now, to intervene in this matter.
All right, Supreme Court unlikely to intervene, at least that's the reading of the judgment so far. Ashok Bagria joining us here in the studio. Ashok, what are we making of what CGI is saying at the moment? Couple of points that we've discussed. I don't think he has concluded reading out the final verdict, but what he's saying so far is no SIT probe, SEBI given 3 more months, the extension to conclude its investigation, and so far it doesn't look like anything is changed when it comes to Hindenburg Research allegations.
Well, actually, first things first, the judgment has been read out. What the Supreme Court has done is that it's put a quietus to this issue of Adani-Hindenburg issue. It is said that SEBI has already carried out investigation into 22 of the 24 cases. There are 2 cases which are pending in which SEBI has sought assistance from foreign authorities. The information to come from foreign authorities is taking time. So the Supreme Court is telling the central government and SEBI that expedite this process and complete the remaining investigations in 2 months' time. The second most important thing is that the Supreme Court has said a categorical no to transfer investigation from SEBI in the Adani-Hindenburg case to a special investigation team or the Central Bureau of Investigation.
Which was the ask of petitioners.
In fact, this was the only demand of the petitioners when they had come to the Supreme Court. There were 6 petitions which were filed in the Supreme Court, and they had come to the Supreme Court saying that, look, in the light of these revelations which have been made by the US short seller Hindenburg in its report, they have to be investigated by an independent agency. The Supreme Court, as a preliminary step in March 2023, had set up an expert committee headed by by a retired judge of the Supreme Court, Justice A.M. Sapre, and there were a few other members who were assisting him. And parallelly, what Supreme Court did was that, look, this is a complex subject which involves the markets. So what they did was they gave this task of carrying out investigations into the allegations to SEBI, and said SEBI will look into these complex matters. The expert committee will take a very broad view, give suggestions if there were any regulatory lacuna or regulatory failure on the part of SEBI. So the expert committee submitted its report. SEBI also submitted its report in November, where they gave a status report saying that 22 cases have been investigated, not a shred of evidence of wrongdoing or market manipulation by Adani has emerged.
Is that what they said in the report? Do we know that for sure?
No, we don't know that for sure, but the sum and substance of the report is that the SEBI has put its affidavit in a very shrouded language, and it's a very complex language they have put, but they have said that whatever we have been able to do was that so far no allegation has been substantiated as far as market manipulation is alleged. Now there are 2 remaining cases where SEBI has told Supreme Court that look, we have sought information from foreign agencies because there are a lot of shell companies which are involved, and we have sought information from these authorities, and it will take time. The third most important thing is that the Supreme Court saying there was an application which was filed in the month of October-November, where there was an allegation of conflict of interest on part of at least 3 members who were a part of the expert committee. The Supreme Court has dismissed those allegations, saying that there is no conflict of interest. The fourth important thing that the court has said is that with respect to OCCRP report, where the OCCRP report said that SEBI had dragged its feet, and there was a lackadaisical attitude of SEBI in probing the investigations against Adani. So the Supreme Court has said that as far as these reports, OCCRP or newspaper reports are concerned, they are not conclusive evidence that some wrongdoing has happened. They can only be taken into account by the investigating agency, and it could be more or less like a corroborative evidence. So there is no conclusive proof of wrongdoing on the part of SEBI even in the OCCRP report. So they are saying that even this OCCRP report cannot be relied on. At the end of the day, the court has summed it up by saying that look, this matter has to be given a quietus. Investigations have happened. 2 cases investigations are pending. SEBI will complete it in 2 months' time. The Government of India and SEBI should look into the expert committee's report if there are any suggestions as far as tightening the regulatory framework is concerned. That should be looked into, and also look into if there was an undue loss due to the stock market prices of Adani companies falling because of Hindenburg report, and undue loss to investors. That is what is the sum and substance of the judgment.
Ashok, is there any reason that the Chief Justice has given on not transferring the case outside of SEBI to independent agencies like CBI, SIT, or even the Enforcement Directorate?
Well, in fact, what the Chief Justice of India read out, or what probably could be the reasoning, we'll have to wait for the fine print. But from what we could gather when he was reading the judgment was the fact that, look, what we are dealing with, what the court was dealing with was a complex market matter, which is better investigated by the statutory regulator. Now, SEBI is a market regulator. It has been set up by an act of parliament, and you need to have faith in it. So SEBI has already carried out that investigations. You have to rely on it. There's no need. We believe that there is no need to set up an SIT or transfer it to a criminal investigating agency like CBI.
But will SEBI really have the teeth or the wherewithal to investigate the 2 pending matters which seem to be hitting a wall of opaque structures where SEBI is unable to penetrate and identify the final rightful beneficiaries of those opaque structures?
Because it hasn't so far.
Will SEBI have the jurisprudence outside of the shores of India? Because it hasn't yet been able to, in the last 1 year, definitely in the last 6 months since August, it hasn't been able to conclusively draw out the final beneficiaries of those 2 pending matters, which are the opaque structures. So in the next 2 months or 3 months, will SEBI really be able to do anything it hasn't done thus far?
Well, so far, the thing is, the SEBI's stand in the Supreme Court has been that, look, we have been able to successfully carry out investigation into 22 cases. Now, these are 2 cases where we've run into some sort of a difficulty because information has to be gathered from foreign entities. Now, whether those foreign entities are going to cooperate with Indian investigating agencies is only time will say. Although the Solicitor General of India, Tushar Mehta, gave an assurance to the Supreme Court saying that we have some sort of a broad treaty arrangement with these countries, and under those arrangement that we expect that those countries and those foreign entities will be able to share information with us. So now that is an assurance, but only time will tell whether there will be cooperation from these foreign entities as far as the wrongdoings, alleged wrongdoings of the Adani group of companies is concerned.
So as far as the verdict delivered today is concerned, is the matter now completely out of Supreme Court? Are there going to be no more Supreme Court hearings on this? Has the matter from the Supreme Court's end legally come to an end?
Yeah. So what this means, what this judgment means is that as far as Supreme Court's interference in this Adani-Hindenburg matter is concerned, it's a shut case. The court has said it's a closed chapter from our end. We did whatever we could have done. We ordered an investigation, we set up an expert committee, and they have given their findings. Now it is time to implement those findings.
All right.
All right, so no regulatory failure on behalf of SEBI. There cannot be any reliance on unregulated substance or material, primarily referring to the OCCRP report, cannot be relied on. That is the verdict coming in from Supreme Court. I think it's fair to say at this moment that it's a shut case when it comes to the Supreme Court. Adani-Hindenburg case is no more in the legal corridors. It will now be solely SEBI's responsibility with the markets regulator to come out with its final report. 3 months extension has been given to SEBI. My colleague Suyash is joining us to discuss the stock impact. You know, just this morning, everybody was predicting a favorable result. This result is as favorable as it gets. Run us through how markets are reacting, especially Adani Group of stocks.
Definitely, Shweta, as you rightly pointed out, the market was preempting a favorable result for Adani Group of stocks, Adani Group of companies, and you know, they opened sharply higher with stocks rising as much as 17% in a day, you know, when the market overall was down about 0.5%. Now, Adani Energy Solutions was the top gainer in today's session. It was up about 17% or so at the day's high. But you know, since 10:30 a.m., once the judgment started coming out, they have paired some of those early morning gains. But all 10 stocks, Shweta, still are firmly in the green. Adani Enterprises, by the way, is up about 4% or so, and Adani Ports is also trading, you know, about 2% higher. Adani Energy Solutions, as I pointed out, was the top gainer in the stable of stocks. It was up about 12% or so. And you know, if we look at the pre-Hindenburg levels, you know, about of the 10 listed entities, 4 are now in the green. If you could pull up those numbers, Adani Ports, now that has been the top gainer among you know, all the 10 listed entities. That is up about 100%, almost you know, 100% from the levels of January 24. Adani Ports has given returns of about 46.5% since January 24 when the damning report came out, and Ambuja has also turned a corner today, whereas ACC is almost flattish. It's down about 0.5%, and NDTV is up somewhere around 4.6%. Although, you know, a lot of other stocks such as your Total Gas, they have a fair way to go. Adani Total Gas is down somewhere around 72% from the pre-Hindenburg report levels, and Adani Energy Solutions, which by the way was the top gainer today, it's down somewhere around 55-56%.
So what does the Adani Enterprises still being down about 15% from pre-Hindenburg tell you, Suyash? Is it an understanding that while independent businesses can be trusted more by investors because they have certain projects in the pipeline, especially in the case of power and ports both, as well as green energy, which is also down incidentally, and enterprises at a group level, there is still some confidence, some assurance that investors are seeking?
Yes, you know, I was talking to Mr. Mohit Gang of Moneyfront. He is of the opinion that they have cleaned up their balance sheets. Okay. And if you look at the, you know, the past year, they have been able to raise money from marquee players such as your GQG, billions of dollars. And, you know, they have restructured some of their debt, paid off some of their debt. So overall, the conglomerate on the whole is positioned well. And if you're talking about the stocks, it is still 15% down from the pre-Hindenburg level, but about 200% up from the 52-week low of 1017. So a big recovery we have seen in the group of stocks, and Adani Power, tremendous returns, almost a multi-bagger since January 24. So yeah, there is a lot of way to go, a lot of wiggle room for investors to still jump on the bandwagon. But as far as Adani Group of stocks go, you know, brilliant rally in the past 1 month. $46 billion of market capitalization has been added by the 10 listed entities.
Wow. All right, and there's no reason to worry, at least as far as the legal hurdles are clear. They are cleared off the way, so Adani Group stocks will perhaps likely to show sharp recovery. They have been recovering since morning today. Suyash, thank you very much. We'll bring you back in to get updates on Adani Group stocks. But just to recap for our viewers, Karthik, what has happened so far and what do we know as far as law is concerned? We do know now that Supreme Court has delivered its final verdict on the matter. The Supreme Court is saying and suggesting that SEBI will continue investigating the matter. There is no outside probe in the matter, not going to be the case. Now, as far as all the other reports that we've discussed through the year, and we'll take our viewers through those reports as well, and what those reports suggest, because that is of consequence as well. The OCCRP report, the Financial Times report, all those reports cannot be relied on. But come to think of it, what did the OCCRP report actually tell you? It actually identified the beneficiaries of those opaque structures. The Financial Times reports further added on to an ongoing investigation into Adani Group of companies on coal price manipulation. So they were not very different from what Indian authorities are already investigating.
Let's the Financial Times report from this matter completely, because that was on a former DRI investigation which started a decade earlier. So if you were to look at the Hindenburg research report, which talked about stock manipulation and talked about flouting of minimum public shareholding, OCCRP in fact built further on that and was able to identify in its own understanding the rightful owners at the top of the food chain when it came to those opaque structures. Supreme Court in the month of November had very categorically suggested, if not stated, that these reports should not be taken as gospel of truth. Prior to that, what happened in the month of March was that the Supreme Court had appointed an expert committee. Who all comprised this expert committee? You of course had former Justice A.M. Sapre heading that expert committee. In addition to that, you also had luminaries like K.V. Kamath and Nandan Nilekani, and these are and O.P. Bhatt, in fact former SBI chairman. So luminaries in the world of finance, luminaries in the world of technology, and heads of listed entities, all pretty much coming together conclusively saying that they have not found any regulatory failure on account of SEBI. Now, no regulatory failure on account of SEBI, but not technically a clean chit to Adani. Now, in November, the Supreme Court had again stated very clearly that these external reports should not be seen as gospel of truth. If anything, SEBI needs to further continue doing its own investigation independent of these reports. And today's verdict seems to be pretty much in line with the hints that the Supreme Court had given on the 24th of November. So again, stating very clearly that the ball is purely in the court of SEBI, giving SEBI another extension of about 2 months or 3 months, Ashok, I think 2 month extension. So another 2 month extension to SEBI to probe matters. Telling SEBI again, don't rely on OCCRP without naming OCCRP, don't rely on Hindenburg research without naming Hindenburg research, and saying that conduct your own investigation, an investigation that SEBI has been struggling to conclude ever since August, at least, if not earlier.
All right. And before we get Sriram Subramanian, my colleague Shri Dharan also joining us here in the studio. Shri, is it now fair to say that Adani Group of companies has got something less to worry about at the end of this judgment, at least as far as legality is concerned, they are in the right?
It does look so, Shweta, because this is not a small, like a minor court which has, come up with this verdict. This is the Supreme Court of India. So I think the courts have looked at what is the credible evidence that is before them. And like Karthik mentioned, they are asking SEBI not to just go by any external report, whether it's OCCPR or a Hindenburg report or anyone else. So I think the court has very clearly put the onus on SEBI to look at and that's appropriate, I think, because SEBI is after all the market regulator. It's empowered to look into any kind of stock manipulation. And I think SEBI will obviously conclude its investigation and then come to a reasonable kind of a decision. Look, based on the evidence that's available. So I think what the court has done is the right thing.
Absolutely. And what's also interesting to suggest, and I'm also, as we continue reading the verdict that it's coming out, Karthik, is that even SEBI for that matter, there is no wrongdoing on the part of SEBI. That is what CJ is also saying at the moment. No regulatory failure. So no wrongdoing.
That's what the committee had also
said. So essentially they are by the book, they are investigating, and we need to give them more time. I think we would like to end at that. That is what the CJ is saying.
My only sort of limitation in understanding this whole case right now, Shri, maybe you can help us and help our viewers understand, is that what is SEBI likely to do now in the next 2 months, which it hasn't been able to do in the last 6 months or the last 1 year or since 2020 for that matter, when it started its own independent investigation into the Adani group of companies. If it is hitting these opaque structures which are based outside the shores of India, and if it hasn't been able to penetrate those opaque structures for the last 4 years, almost now 3.5 years, what will it do in the next 2 months or 3 months? Does it have the teeth to go ahead and bite those opaque structures?
So, Karthik, I think first of all, it's not unusual for large groups which are like on the rise to encounter such allegations and
reports from, others. Don't forget that even Reliance went through this phase early on in its, and the regulator at that time had to face similar challenges of having to probe something where they had limited information, where they're dealing with external agencies, sovereign agencies, which may not necessarily cooperate with you in terms of sharing information. So I think there's a very limited kind of ability which SEBI has to actually go behind the veil and look at what's really happening. And I think when they do that, they also have to see whether the corporate veil is as per law or not. I think that's probably what the real test of this whole thing would be. Whether is there any illegality in the structures. If there are certain structures which Adani has created, which is illegal from the word go, then certainly I think SEBI has a reason to look at it. But if on the whole the corporate structure is something which is commonly adopted by companies, and it's it's like kosher, there's no illegality in that, then I think SEBI will probably not want to pierce the veil to an extent where it's probably not, it's empowered to, or where it's certainly going to hit a wall in terms of getting information or even cooperation from other sovereign agencies.
But in the month of November, Sri, SEBI had said that it does not seek any extension, it does not want any further time to complete its investigation. It is ready with those 20 out of 22 matters. Should SEBI not release at least its findings on the remaining 20 matters and not wait for this expiry of another 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, further extensions of timelines, and at least release what it knows for sure, rather than letting this case hang in speculation?
That's true. Because that's also not fair to the investors or not fair to Adani either.
I mean, what did we see today?
Because
we saw Adani stocks
which is consistently hanging over
absolutely,
the group
and we are seeing investors also pretty much profit taking on a daily basis. You had Adani stocks before 10:30 a.m. this morning touching as high as 17%, 18%, and now there has been profit selling as the Supreme Court read out its verdict. So should SEBI not immediately at least release what it knows for sure?
I agree with you, Karthik, because SEBI, after all, is the custodian of the overall market functioning, right? It has to ensure that everyone in the market participant works with clear information, there is no uncertainty, and especially with its own investigation. I think SEBI should come out and say, okay, this is what our investigation was, and this is what we found, and this is the state of affairs as we know today. I think that's very, very important to settle the dust which is like around the Adani group.
Okay, taking a cue from what Karthik and you are suggesting is that somebody could decide to file an RTI. In fact, if SEBI decides not to release the report, because SEBI is covered under the RTI, and somebody is going to file an RTI and look into those investigation reports and say, look, this is what SEBI has actually found out in those 22 cases. Now, the most important things are these two cases. As it's already been pointed out that what SEBI is really looking at is extraterritorial jurisdiction. SEBI can control it's a market regulator, it can control the markets in India. It cannot force any foreign entity to share information with respect to an Indian company. Now, what SEBI at the best it can do is to request the foreign entities, seek information and try to put the pieces of the puzzle together and come to some sort of a conclusion. And that is exactly what's going to happen in the rest of these two cases which are pending investigation.
And finally, also, what I want to add is that, despite the ongoing controversy, Shweta, Karthik, and, there are investors who come on board, put faith in Adani. We've had Rajiv Jain, GQG coming in, investing a lot of money, and he's made tons of money on that investment. And then you had even the US government's own fund, IDFC, investing $500 million in the Adani port. So at some level, I think we need to look at whether this has dragged on too much, and let's not forget that there has been a real damage to the Adani group. And was it just an innocent report from Hindenburg, or were there other forces at play? So we don't know.
Pretty much a black swan event for Adani Group, and it has seen the K-shaped recovery, so to speak.
Absolutely. So I think Mr. Gautam Adani is having the last laugh as his stocks recover and the stock market valuation goes back to what it was historically. So I think we'll have to wait and see if any new thing comes out of the reports that SEBI decides to release, and how this whole saga ends. But I think right now, Mr. Adani has reason to smile today.
Absolutely. Shriram, a lot of organizations, media houses are going to run this as a clean chit to Adani, which was the case when expert committee also came out with its report. Shriram Subramanian, if you're still with us, sir, what would you call today's, how would you label rather today's SC ruling? Is it a clean chit to SEBI, or is it a clean chit to Adani? And what are investors to look forward to when it comes to Adani group of companies as far as Hindenburg allegations are concerned?
No, basically the Supreme Court is saying let SEBI do its job. The petitions are dismissed, SEBI should not rely on these third-party reports. Let SEBI do its own investigations and come to conclusion. I would actually think 3 months down the line, when SEBI will definitely come out with a report, impose some fine on some Adani Group companies, and that may actually go to SAT. And so I would think that somewhere it is sort of you won the case, yet you sort of lost out. That's a type of thing. Definitely, this was not the remit of Supreme Court to investigate, and so that's where the ball is back to SEBI.
All right.
So it cannot be termed as a clean sheet, definitely, for Adani Group.
And what makes you say that there could be a fine on Adani Group of companies? Because so far we don't know what those investigations have concluded, in what manner they have concluded, and what the final report is going to be all about.
Yeah, I agree completely. This is just speculative on my basis, saying that if SEBI finds something, at the end of the day, it will boil down to a fine or more disclosures by the Adani Group. SEBI may pull up Adani Group and fine it. And that's what has happened in the other cases that one of the speakers referred to also.
Okay.
So, Shweta, I'll be very surprised if there's any kind of, even minor kind of penalty, a rap on the knuckle put on Adani, because, we are talking about stock manipulation. And if you cannot selectively say, okay, we had only this much of a problem with Adani and they manipulated only this extent, or only these entities were involved. So either you give them a clean chit, or you say that you find them guilty, right? So I don't think there
can't be a middle path.
There cannot be a middle path in this, because that's what you owe your investors, what you need to uphold for the sanctity of securities laws in this country. So I think either they get a clean chit, or SEBI has to come out and say, okay, we have found evidence and this is the penalty that the Adani, and it will not be a minor penalty in that case.
So now that we are looking at SEBI pretty much needing to strengthen its own sort of, rules and its own mechanisms to ensure that no such, if you can call it such or not, no such alleged manipulations can happen in the future, what can and what should SEBI do? Is it important then for corporate India, listed companies, part of corporate India, to also disclose the final beneficiaries of any foreign investing they are receiving into their companies?
So disclosures absolutely have to be part of your corporate governance norms, Karthik, because you need to know who
should disclosures be limited to the country of funding, limited to the company registered in a particular country, or should it also be the promoters, directors and everybody who has anything to do with those investors?
Absolutely, it should go all the way back, because if you are a listed company in India where ordinary Indian investors are investing money in your company, then it's your duty to make the appropriate disclosures. And whether it is a step down subsidiary, whether it's a holding company in a foreign country, you have to disclose who the beneficiaries are, who's the beneficial owner of these interests. So I think those are things which SEBI will now start looking at. And now don't forget, there is enough technology which is now available, even in terms of your machine learning, artificial intelligence. There's a lot of data which SEBI can start crunching, and not just in terms of trading volume, but also publicly available data from other exchanges, which SEBI can start using. So it's a question of SEBI using this technology and the information available, and also tightening the norms to make sure that investors know enough about who the beneficial owners are. And if there are any entities which are trading in a particular stock, who these entities are and who are the beneficial owners eventually, especially where entities have limited float, because I think that's very important, because that's one way you stock. Then it becomes easier for them to do what the allegations typically tend to say about stock manipulation. So in those cases, I think SEBI needs to come up with stronger norms and say that this is the kind of disclosure you need to make in the interest of investors and the market at large.
All right, and final word perhaps, Karthik, on the people who've lost money post-Hindenburg, the investors' wealth which was dramatically eroded, come to think of it, $150 to $160 billion worth of money eroded from market cap of Adani Group of companies. That money is not going to come back. So I think an investigation in that order is also necessitated at this point.
I think investors who are investing in any company, any stocks, know the inherent risks that come with investing. So is it fair to say that those investors have lost out because of some misgovernance, misdoing? Perhaps
allegations
not. So, these are all allegations at the end of the day. When you invest in a stock, there are risks associated with it. Even when you invest in mutual funds, which is a basket of stocks, there are risks associated. Absolutely. So if you, and I think all all market experts out there tell you, look at fundamentally good companies stay invested for the long term.
Right.
If you bought Adani stock on the 23rd of Jan last year and sold it on the 25th, it was obviously bad investing. But if you did stay invested, you would have recovered a good portion of that already.
Absolutely.
So just to add to that, Shweta, while equity market is known for its risk, you're supposed to invest with your eyes open. I think what as a regulator, SEBI should not condone is any kind of activity which is illegal, right? So, you have these companies which are like, stocks which are like pumped up and then dumped. So pump and dump kind of stocks should not be allowed. Otherwise, equity is, the reward is proportionate to the risk you assume. So I think that's something investors should understand before they come into the equity market. And like Karthik said, I mean, woe unto you if you sold the Adani stocks prematurely. You should have probably taken a cue from a man like Rajiv Jain and said, I'm looking at a multi-bag of stocks here. So I hope most of our investors who've been watching News9 live have stayed invested and kept faith in the Indian market, in the overall Indian market and the India story. So I think that's what Adani Group in some sense also represents, Shweta, to my mind.
But the Supreme Court is now suggesting that there should be a probe as far as loss of investors' wealth is concerned after Hindenburg. We don't know whether there's going to be a proper investigation into the matter, but the legal matter now stands closed. The Supreme Court says SEBI has been given 3 more months to carry out its investigation in the remaining existing matters, but SEBI will continue investigating Adani Group of companies. As far as outside investigation is concerned, that is not going to happen anytime soon. Gentlemen, thank you very much, all of you. Sriram Subramaniam, to you too, sir. Thank you very much for taking time out for joining us here on News9. But with that, it's a wrap. Thank you for watching.
वर्ष 2070 तक भारत नेट जीरो का लक्ष्य हासिल करेगा.
There is certainly a wall of capital coming into the clean tech, climate tech space, not just in India but across the world.
This and more, streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
Since the last 2 years, Khalistani terror groups are threatening Indian diplomats in Canada, US, UK and Australia. Investigations of these threats led us to the first ever abduction and killing of an Indian diplomat, Ravindra Matre, in UK's Birmingham in 1984. Our months-long investigation finally led us to the murderer of Ravindra Matre, who has been hiding in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir for the last 40 years. Watch our exclusive documentary, Murder of an Indian Diplomat, where we reveal the man who killed Ravindra Matre.
Stop searching, start streaming. Download the world's first news OTT, News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
Bangalore traffic is an example of something that has gone wrong with our system.
We have more than 50 flyovers in Bangalore city. If flyover is a solution to traffic problem, Bangalore should not have traffic problem.
According to TomTom Traffic Index 2022, Bangalore is ranked as the second worst city in the world when it comes to traffic.
The speed limit at the ORR is 80 kilometers per hour, but our vehicle has only moved 10 kilometers per hour.
What Bangalore needs is a surgery, but what we have been offered repeatedly are band-aids.
Only on the world's first news OTT. News9 Plus, ahead of the curve.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए, और कमाना है तो खरीदिए। जानकारी, सलाह और निवेश सब एक ही सुपर ऐप पर। पैसे का सवाल है तो जवाब है Money9। आजादी पैसे की, अभी डाउनलोड करें।
A very good morning to all our viewers. I'm Neha Bhan. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of this hour. We begin with amid Arvind Kejriwal skipping yet another ED summon, Delhi Minister and Aam Aadmi Party leader Saurabh Bhardwaj held a press conference slamming the central agencies for targeting Delhi Chief Minister ahead of the Lok Sabha polls. He said that the BJP-led centre is hatching conspiracies to arrest Chief Minister Kejriwal to stop him from campaigning for the Lok Sabha elections. Listen in.
ईडी के तीसरे समन पर भी अरविंद केजरीवाल नहीं गए और आम आदमी पार्टी ने इस पूरे मामले में कहा कि जांच के लिए तैयार है। सौरभ जी, ये कैसा सहयोग है कि एक तरफ कह रहे सहयोग भी देंगे, दूसरी तरफ जाते नहीं, ईडी बुलाती रहती है?
देखिए, ये बात बिल्कुल साफ है कि अरविंद केजरीवाल जी को गिरफ्तार करना ही एकलौता मकसद है। 1.5 साल हो गया इस इन्वेस्टिगेशन को। ईडी, सीबीआई, देश की सबसे बड़ी एजेंसी इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रही है, कोई सबूत नहीं मिला। चार्जशीट दायर हो चुकी है।